I am a proud co-chair of the board for the Hetrick Martin Institute. And so it's with pure joy that we welcome you. The HMI organization does a lot of work to support LGBTQIA plus young people ages 13 to 24. And we support every program that we offer through the lens of mental well-being and health. And so what a great way to kick off and celebrate May and Mental Health Awareness Month, a great way to acknowledge Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, Jewish American History Month, and also just take a thoughtful pause to say that the world is a bit wild and chaotic today. There are laws and things happening in our news space every day, compromising choice and compromising our rights that are human rights. And so we want to acknowledge that HMI stands behind the right to choose and the right to select what feels right for you as a human being. And so today's conversation around mental health will be really a celebration of all of the dimensions of diversity that we bring into the environments and communities that we choose. And so I want to pass the baton, as I said, to the incredible Sean Outler from Macy's Inc. to share a couple of updates before we get to our program.
So thank you, Josh, and good afternoon, everyone. Just thank you for inviting me to kick off this important conversation on well-being and the workplace. I just think that there is so much going on, and what a timely conversation. The events of the last 2 years, from the ups and downs of the pandemic, the murders of unarmed Black people, the persistence of Asian hate crimes, wars, religious intolerance are unprecedented and have had a profound impact on all of us. In addition, there's a growing anti-LGBTQIA, state laws that threaten physical and mental well-being of our communities. It seems that there's an event taking place that causes some, if not all of us, stress and anxiety almost every single day. At the same time, we've entered a new era where our professional and personal lives are converging. Some of us have lost loved ones, suffered illness, and have had to change living arrangements. As a result, the issues that impact us at home are having a tremendous impact on us at work, which at times is taking place in the same room where we eat and or sleep. So in order to gauge and better understand how at Macy's our 85,000 colleagues are feeling, we administer a Culture Pulse survey twice a year. In 2020 and 21, at the height of the pandemic and racial injustice, our colleagues' concerns were COVID-19, safety, racial injustice, and well-being. And, listen, we feel good that over the last 12 months, our colleagues' sentiments have improved in most of these areas. But we've learned through the commentary from a recent survey, we learned about workload and work-life balance challenges. That said, well-being continues to be the number one topic on colleagues' minds and the one they want to talk about really the most. So in response to this feedback, we've taken a few steps to support our colleagues. One, we've re-educated them on the many resources they can leverage to gain support, like Life Solutions. It's Macy's Inc. Employee Assistance Program. It's confidential counseling service, one of the most widely leveraged resources for mental well-being, in addition to our 12 healthy habits, which is tips and ideas on how to live your best life. Two, we've also engaged in meaningful dialogue and invited noted experts to come in and speak to our colleagues. In August of 2020, our CEO, Jeff Gennette, was in conversation with Dr. Deepak Chopra, world-renowned pioneer in integrative medicine and personal transformation. He provided us with practical tips on how we can recenter ourselves, improve well-being, and foster a sense of connection. Last week, we hosted our second annual Week of Understanding, where we had a week of conversations geared toward building awareness and greater understanding of each other. We ended the week with an hour-long presentation from Jay Shetty, the host of the #1 health and wellness podcast, On Purpose. The conversation was specifically focused on well-being in the workplace. Jay shared inspirational and specific tips on how to overcome stress and burnout to be your best self. He provided tips on how to reframe your story, to think about your role in an organization and the impact you have on others. In addition, this past September, we at Macy's put focus on meeting management and workload, two of the most important concerns raised from one of our most recent Culture Pulse surveys. We introduced Focus Fridays, which is the practice of having unscheduled time for our colleagues who are in meetings most of the day. We launched a shared meeting cadence, which keeps important days in mind for all colleagues. So we don't schedule really when on the days and on the during specific events, which are really important to our colleagues. So in general, in closing, we know things are busy and the world is more unsettled now than ever. Our colleagues' well-being is important and it impacts all aspects of their personal and professional life. As a community, as an organization, we're committed to meeting colleagues where they are and supporting them one another every single day. So thank you for the opportunity to open up today's session. I really commend you for having this dialogue. There's, again, so much impacting us all. And I think we can just be there to support each other, how much better we can be. So Josh, thank you so much. And I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. That was amazing. And such a great way, I just put in the chat, a great way to celebrate all the great work that Macy's Inc. is doing to acknowledge workforce, workplace, marketplace. And they're doing so much more, which we'll share with you towards the end of our conversation today. We're going to pass it to the amazing Lizzie Robinson, who is a very exciting member of our HMI team. And she'll take you through a bit of today's topics and overarching objectives. And we're going to do some breakout groups. So get ready to actually be engaged with colleagues that maybe you have not met before, to really extend a bit more time around about mental health and the impacts on the LGBTQIA community. So Lizzie, take it away.
Thanks so much, Josh. And thank you, Sean, for that beautiful introduction into some of the beautiful work that Macy's is doing. Our hope today is that as a counseling team at the Hedrick Martin Institute, that we are going to be able to share with this group here some of the things that we are doing to support LGBTQIA plus mental health in our own practices. And hopefully by way of example, just being able to start off a discussion around some of the specifics and things that all of the folks here might envision bringing to their own workplace or other community spaces that they occupy. We do have a presentation for you all that I will share in just a minute, but before we go into that, I wanted to just give my team a chance to introduce themselves so that you know who we all are going into this presentation. So as Josh said, my name is Lizzie McAdam. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Director of Counseling and Case Management here at Hedrick Martin. And I'm just going to pass it around to all the folks that are presenting today so that you know who's in the room. Asha, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Asha Alexander. My pronouns are she, her. I am a social worker by training, and here at HMI for the counseling team, I'm the clinical coordinator and senior supervising clinician. Wonderful to meet you all and be here. And I'll pass it over to Theo.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Theo Cherepko. I'm the intake data and grants coordinator at HMI, and I also supervise interns. I'm also a social worker. And I'm going to pass it over to Adam.
Thanks, Theo. Hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday. My name is Adam Stevens. My pronouns are he, they. I am a drama therapist, a creative arts therapist by trade, and at HMI, I am the program manager for bereavement and mental health services. I'm excited to be here and engage in these wonderful conversations. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Elena.
Thank you, Adam. Hi, everyone. My name is Elena. My pronouns are she, her. I am a full-time counselor here at HMI, and I am trained as a drama therapist as well. I'm very much looking forward to engaging these conversations with you. And I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Spencer.
Thank you, Elena. Hi, everybody. My name is Spencer, he and his pronouns. I'm also a drama therapist, and at HMI, I'm the Age Out coordinator and supervising counselor. And I'm going to pass it back to Lizzie.
Great. We are so thrilled to be here and be in this space with you all. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and share just some brief slides with you all. So we're very excited to be here and speak with you all. We were asked to speak on the impact of LGBTQIA plus mental health on workforces and workplaces. So we as a counseling and case management team, as you could hear from the introductions, we are an interdisciplinary team. We have creative arts therapists and social workers who are all working together to create safe space for LGBTQIA plus youth ages 13 to 24. And we'll share just like a brief outline of our own structure of what kind of services we offer. But then our main hope today is to really connect the structure of the type of services we're offering to our own personal work as clinicians. So as clinicians, we spend a lot of time really engaging in how we are walking the walk and talking the talk of taking care of ourselves in this work. And that also involves really diving deep into who we are as individuals, our experiences, the things that we have been through in our lives, the pieces of our identity that have made us who we are. And it's important for us to be able to create spaces to talk about those things, because that is part of how we create safe space for LGBTQ youth and for ourselves as members of that community as well. So we sort of talked about the agenda a little bit. We're basically going to jump right into talking about the mental health model and talking about how we engage in our own work. And then we'll invite you all to pick a breakout room. We have 3 different topics today that we're going to focus on. And each person here will get a chance to select a group to go into and to talk more in depth around some of this work that we're doing to take care of our own mental health. So we just went through our introductions. And so just briefly, in terms of the mental health model at HMI, there are a few important aspects that make our mental health model unique. The first is that we offer free and long-term therapy with a very low barrier to access care for our youth members. So we don't use insurance. We actually just allow youth members to join as needed. And we are really focused on connecting young people to care that is long-term and really affirming as a space. We are grounded in liberation-focused practices, and that sort of phrase, liberation-focused healing or liberation-focused therapy or models, can mean a lot of different things. For us, our work is based on the work of Shauna Murray Brown, who is a social worker out of Baltimore. If you aren't familiar with her work, I would highly recommend it. And the work is really focused on how to create safe space for queer youth, for Black and Brown youth who are coming to us seeking support, for trans youth that are coming to us seeking support, for youth that are part of all sorts of different religions, all sorts of different pieces of socioeconomic status, all sorts of abilities, that we are really looking to create a space that is actively confronting systems of harm and the ways in which those show up, not just in the experiences of our young people, but also it's everywhere, right? We know this is part of systems that we're a part of. So we're committed at HMI to really exploring that, interrogating that, and really looking at the ways in which we are creating that space for young people to feel safe. Part of that, as we will talk about today, is also creating safe space for ourselves and for exploring our own identities, our own experiences, and how we are showing up in the work to support young people, which we'll go into in more detail in a bit. It's important to us that as therapists that we are role models within the LGBTQIA plus community, and we actively position ourselves as role models for the young people that we work with. The majority of us consider ourselves to be part of the LGBTQIA plus community in some way, shape, or form. So this is important work that we're engaging in, and also this is part of how we model this for young people. And the last piece I'll add is that our treatment is very youth-centered and youth-led. So, our clinicians work very actively with young people that they are supporting to find out what it is young people are wanting to get from the mental health space, what their needs are, what their experiences have been, what kinds of systems of harm they might need help navigating or problem solving around, and how we as therapists can support that and also stand in a place of advocacy and active participation in supporting our clients to work on the problems that they encounter in the world. So today we are hoping to actually zero in on 3 of these pieces with you all. So as I mentioned, in terms of engaging in liberation-focused healing work for us, we do not consider ourselves experts. We don't consider ourselves people who are actually training in that. We consider ourselves to be very much learners and active learners who are working to unpack pieces of our practice ourselves. And part of our hope today is in giving presentations like this is to make our process transparent and to share some examples with you all of things that we're doing within our own practices, and then hopefully to have a conversation with you all about things that you are seeing or things that you wish that you were seeing in your places of work, where you also can engage in creating safer spaces to support mental health. So our hope today is to focus on 3 topics. The first is around creating safer spaces for LGBTQIA plus folks through policy and guidelines. The second is going to be focused on using the creative arts and embodied activities to promote wellness and community. And the third piece is going to be talking about the importance of affinity spaces in our work. We will also, as part of these breakout groups, I'll skip ahead and share with you all some of our guiding questions. So in a moment, we will be opening up the breakout rooms and folks will have an opportunity to self-select into one of these 3 groups. Theo and Spencer will be leading a conversation, sharing with you all some of the pieces around policy and guidelines and creating safer spaces that we ourselves have done at HMI or actively working on currently at HMI. Elena and myself will be leading a conversation around using the creative arts and embodied activities to promote wellness and community. Again, we'll share some examples of things that we have seen and are working to do at HMI as a way to springboard conversation for what others are seeing or would like to see in their places of work. And then Adam and Asha will be leading a conversation around the importance of affinity spaces and how that can support the mental health and well-being, in particular of LGBTQIA plus folks, but also sort of looking at some of the other pieces of affinity and other pieces of groups that we have put together at HMI that have been important in this. And as part of those 3 groups, we have 3 guiding questions for all of us to focus on. The first is, how do we as professionals engage in this work ourselves and show up for our coworkers? The second is, what spaces and policies already exist in your place of work and what would you like to see? And then the third question is, how do these spaces support the health and safety of LGBTQIA plus youth and others in these spaces? So
I'm going to go ahead and open the breakout groups, and in true form around mental health well-being, we want you to self-select. And so you'll see 3 breakout groups: policy and guidelines, creative arts, as well as affinity spaces. And so you can go ahead and select which of these groups you'd like to participate in, and we'll go from there.
I would say, why don't we just start with the first group and then run through. So Theo and Spencer, would the 2 of you like to share out, or anyone else from your group like to share out about your discussion?
we can absolutely share. I can speak a bit. If anyone else from our group would like to join, please do. We were talking about policies and guidelines, and so we opened with everyone sharing a policy that's currently in place that they feel affirms LGBTQ plus BIPOC individuals. And I think there was some really lovely conversation. Guy and Stephen both mentioned some equity inclusion work that's happening, and that it's been happening for years. And even though it's been happening for years, it's a journey, and that their education is maturing over time, and that it's space where they can learn about some big topics like bias. And so they were sharing just their appreciation for having that space, and also recognizing that that space is limited. You know, there's like 4 hours one day, 4 hours another day, and that the work has to continue outside of the space. I will pass it to Theo so he can share a bit too.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what we talked about is just the idea that this is an ongoing process, and that, you know, I really liked Spencer's sharing of, you know, appreciating a policy at HMI where we get together and have like accountability meetings, and we talk to, you know, listen to other staff about what they need, because, you know, that's how we learn, is by talking to staff about their needs, and trying to create an open space where they can feel comfortable talking about that.
Great, thank you. Anyone else from Theo and Spencer's group who wants to share? Annalie has a beautiful comment in the chat as well. Being trained on certain diversity inclusion practices, and a little safe space flag on the desk. So other sort of visual markers and things that are helpful as well. Thanks, Annalie, for sharing that. Any other pieces to add? All right, why don't we move to the second group, which Alina and I were facilitating, on using creative arts and embodied activities to promote wellness. Alina, I'll turn it over to you to kick us off.
Yeah, thanks. We started off by sharing different examples and different ways that creative arts and creative arts therapy show up in our programming structure, both for youth members and for staff alike. Our staff is pretty stacked both ways between social work and creative arts therapy. So we try to really embody those practices together. We, in the past, have run staff wellness workshop series with our staff to kind of create low threshold de-stressing spaces for regulation, kind of to emulate the kinds of groups that open groups that we try to have for youth members in the programming. So mindfulness and meditation group, an improv game group, a crafting hour, and a space where folks get just drop in and play video games, to kind of offer that same space that we try to create for the youth members through creative arts, to make it seem, so it's a therapeutic space, right? But that's not necessarily what's directly written on the tin, to make it kind of feel more accessible and inviting and less prescribed, as it were. And then Lizzie led us through a little bit about the ways our professional development days promote both staff wellness, but also a way for us to sit in the work and unpack what's going on for us. Lizzie, if you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, we sort of talked about some of the complications of facilitating groups for ourselves. So it's been very helpful, I think, for us as a team to have space to engage in creative art making and artwork together. But that also there have been some times, and Justin, you also spoke to this, that burnout has been very alive and well and real for many people, in particular during the pandemic. And so there are also times where, as a team, we have not wanted to be the ones facilitating the process for our own processing, and instead have looked to hire an outside person to come in and be able to facilitate things. So holding that tension around, there are so many strengths and skills that people hold on teams, and things that people can bring to the work together and create space ourselves. And also sometimes it's important to not have to do that lift ourselves. Anything else that folks from our group would like to add? Yes, Annalie agreed that I wish that all places had the option of a crafting hour. It sounds delightful. Adam agrees. All right, why don't we go to our third group on the importance of affinity spaces? Asha and Adam, I will turn it over to both of you to lead our share out for that group.
Awesome, thank you. I think we first kind of began with just saying like why we came to this space, why we were drawn to talking about affinity spaces, and some of our examples of how affinity spaces were created at HMI. One is we have group supervision, right, to talk about the work, how it makes us feel, but also just being connected as like staff, as coworkers. We don't really have that time to just go and check in at someone's office anymore, so we have to be really diligent and creative. There was also across teams, we have team happy hour where we get together and like make smoothies and just talk about TV shows and books that we're watching, right? Whatever you're making, whether it's like coffee or a smoothie, whatever you're imbibing on, right? But just really trying to recreate those moments where we just really talked in the hallway and caught up. And it's so different. We have to really point it to make it now. We call it beverage of choice. I love that, your beverage of choice for the team happy hour. And then, of course, in our AEI initiative, some folks got together and said, okay, we need more space to learn and grow for ourselves, for our coworkers, and like for the world. And so a group got together and read books of their own desire on anti-racism, right? And so they read them together as a group and discussed it and talked about how it connected to them and to the larger world at play and to the work. And that was a completely voluntary space that folks just wanted to create and learn together. So those are kind of the examples we gave of affinity spaces, and kind of asked folks just, what did you know about these kind of spaces, and what do you think about those examples? Do they exist at your jobs? And we had some really nice thoughts, and I want to offer Adam and anyone else who was in our group some space to kind of share out.
Thank you, Asha, for giving us that beautiful description of time well spent, right? A lot of folks said, we're wondering about what is an affinity space, right? And once, we kind of expanded upon that and had a chance to be in dialogue around, what that looks like at HMI and how we support our youth and also ourselves through the practice of having these affinity spaces. We learned at the Macy's and Bloomingdale's group, it's called employee research groups, right? So very similar construct, but just, giving bold representation, which was said, a bold representation of what these spaces are and the importance of them existing, right? To build community, right? To build relationships, to allow a sense of healing and to be regenerative, right? Speaking to burnout, like, oh, what does it mean to be in a space with like-minded folks who share my experience, who share my narratives, and be able to heal and, grow back my spirit a little bit, so that this way I'm able to go back into the work to support the youth that we're here to serve in a more meaningful and thorough way, right? So that was really neat. Another person in our group so beautifully said, I'm here to listen and learn in service of the other, right? In service of another, right? And that was really powerful. And, what does it mean to have this level of support, right? At every level, what does it mean to have this level of support, to be in affinity, to be in relationship with, right? And those were some of the themes that were trending amongst our group, in addition to what Asha said. And now, we would like to hear from some of the folks in the group who were also there to share out on some of what you're taking away, some of your experience of talking about affinity spaces. So we'd love to hear from you.
I want to lift up Angie in the comments saying employee resource groups. I love it. Like, these affinity spaces have different names all across. Mm-hmm. I also want to share out, right, folks talking about wanting to have groups to talk about wellness from a trauma-informed lens, right? So how to hold the work of holding life in the work, right? All that stuff doesn't just go away just because we enter our workplaces, right? It still lives within us and our bodies. And how do we hold all of that, right? Someone lifted up the importance of giving folks a forum to speak as their authentic selves and learning together. Anyone else from our group have pieces that I forgot or pieces that you want to add? I think that's us. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Great. Lizzie, do you want to wrap up before we close out the session? I'll wrap up for the day, but any final words, Lizzie?
No final words. I'm hoping in a second we'll do some closing, but I know, Josh, you have a few things that you wanted to mention before we start. Just thank you all so much for showing up in these beautiful conversations. Josh, I'll turn it over to you and then we'll do our closing.
Great. Well, we talk a lot about at Saterman Connect, we learn about ourselves through other people's stories. And it starts with one person, one voice, and one person getting more and more comfortable sort of asking questions. And so first and foremost, we want to thank Macy's Inc., Sean and Anji, and all of the teams at Macy's for what they do. Kyle has joined us from Fresh. We just want to celebrate Fresh and other organizations who are really supporting mental health, especially within the HMI frameworks that we offer our young people. And many of the others that are on the call today and from previous conversations who do that support. Macy's has this amazing platform called the Human Capital Report, which supports CSR, or corporate social responsibility, and ESG, environmental social governance. And these are ways to embed in the way organizations think, act, and operate. And they have a social purpose around creating a brighter future with bold representation. And this is part of that journey. This is part of that mission for everyone to think about how people, planet, and community come together around voice, choice, and ownership. And so it's a beautiful celebration as we close out today, in that you all today shared pieces of your stories and shared key learnings around 3 key topics. There are many, many more. A few things I've taken away from today is how do we create safe spaces for all, that's part of inclusion and belonging, and mental well-being is finding ways to create safe spaces for those to bring themselves into those environments that they wish to be a part of. And consider how powerful your voice is, that through sharing, through asking, through involving, that you create moments of trust and relationship building for yourselves and your organization. And consider the systems we live in. Sometimes the systems that we live in today are just because they've existed for so long. And are they correct in today's world? Are they serving the workforce, workplace, marketplace, and loved ones that you are a part of? And so how can you also illuminate, sort of turning that dimmer switch from dark to bright when there are systems in place that don't feel right, that don't feel comfortable, and articulate and share why they don't feel comfortable. So you can meet folks where they're at in their inclusion and belonging journey and continue those mental health conversations forward, right? So it's about the journey and not the destination. And that can be hard for organizations to wrap their head around. So in celebrating our journey, we hope you will continue to reach out to HMI as a resource to support yourselves and your organization. Our LGBTQIA+ young people are so grateful for all of your community support and all the work that you all do to make our jobs at HMI and the work that we do come to fruition. So in honor of May Mental Health Awareness Month, we would love to close out today's session by everybody going to their chat and going ahead and sharing with us one word of the day, something they took away from today's session, or something you're maybe feeling or experiencing that you would like to share with our group in recognition of today's conversation. Beautiful. Authenticity, knowledge, cascade, process, support, changing spaces, journey. These are valuable and meaningful words to think about when expressing the importance of mental health and mental well-being. Authentic presence, inspire, community. Thank you, Chantel. Uplifting, positive information. You're welcome, and thank you for joining. Community. And we hope to see you soon.